Hey guys, James Riley from the Goliath Historical Fencing Academy. I'm making this quick introduction today because uh, the content that I recorded yesterday was done under not the best conditions. So we train in a giant space that's heated and cooled by an industrial unit that can be quite loud. And so that being said, I really felt like the content was important. They're particularly for several distance learning students that are at a stage in their fencing where they could really use this discussion, but really just for everybody. So I'm hopeful that some of the information will transmit, even though it can be kind of hard to hear. I've listened to it myself on my phone, and I feel like it's basically okay, especially if you've heard me talk a lot. You know what you can kind of anticipate what I'm going to say. So for those of you who can't hear or can't make out the details of the content, never fear. I'm happy to say that last month I was down in Dallas and I recorded volume 2 of the Book of Five Words series for True Steel. So at some point in the coming months that will be published, and you guys can access this discussion as well as lots of other cool things that we talk about in volume 2. So good luck with making out what you can. I think that it's basically accessible, especially to people who kind of already understand the conversation. But as always, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and enjoy the video.
Okay guys, James Riley from Goliath Historical Fencing Academy. So I want to talk a little bit about shooting and shooting sheaths and how it relates to other types of movement patterns, other types of footwork, and how it sort of sorts itself into its own tactical box. So the main distinction that I want to make with regards to shooting is how I'm carrying the momentum of my center of mass towards my opponent, right? So, the idea with shooting is that I'm taking my center of mass past my forward foot. So I can do that one of two ways. I can either do that with a passing step, right? I can pass, bring my center of mass. So there's a moment in time right around here where my center of mass is past my forward foot, and it demands my rear foot to catch up to be able to catch me from falling over, right? I can also do that with a gather step. So I can just sort of, with this flash movement pattern, I rotate my right hip, right shoulder forward. As I do, I bring my center of mass past my forward foot, and then I fall onto my rear foot to catch myself. In both instances, I'm looking to land in vage, right? This is different than an explosive movement pattern like a lunge, for instance, right? So if I lunge towards my opponent, I'm going to keep my center of mass located directly in between my heels. I'm going to push down with my rear foot. As I do, that lightens my forward foot, makes it so that I can lift it up off the mat. And then as I do, I'm just going to push forward and extend my rear leg, extend my rear knee to push my center of mass forward. But at the end of my lunge, my center of mass is still directly in between my two heels, right? Maybe not evenly distributed the way that it would be if I were in vage. So if I'm in vage, my center of mass is equidistant from my two heels. At the end of a lunge, my center of mass is closer to my forward foot than it is to my rear foot. That being said, it never actually moves past my forward foot. What that means is I can arrest momentum of my center of mass very rapidly and change directions very quickly. So I can move my center of mass away from my training partner. So in the case of a lunge or any type of these gather steps where I have control of my center of mass the whole time, or even just like a basic passing step where I have control of my center of mass the whole time, I am always in control of my body. I can arrest momentum, and I can change directions immediately upon completing the step. With a shooting step, I'm bringing my center of mass past my forward foot, and there's a space and time where I have no control over my body, and I have to land a kind of recovery step to get myself back into a vage, where I can then change directions by shifting my center of mass towards my rear foot or my forward foot. So, how does this play a role tactically? The way that I want to think about this is, what types of situations am I looking to commit the motion of my center of mass so radically towards my training partner? So there's basically two reasons that I would want to do this. The first reason is that it's what it requires for me to be able to hit my training partner. So for instance, if I'm here at this distance, right? We'll say at this distance, I can't hit with a lunge step. Well, so if my training partner pennies, I can't hit with a lunge step, right? But if I can get my momentum going, I can get a strong bind before my training partner is able to perceive it and recover his position. If I use my shooting step, I can begin to close that gap more rapidly and beat him to his taker, right? So I'm either looking at instances where I'm gonna hit, right? Where I know that I'm gonna hit. I know that because of whatever reason, because of the nature of the bind, because of my own assessment of my attributes, how fast I am in relation to how fast he is, how strong he is, how easy it is for him to perceive the nature of my action, how knowledgeable he is with regards to what defensive actions he should take. I'm trying to assess how much time and commitment it's going to take for me to be able to beat him to his taker and hit in those instances, right? If I overestimate my capabilities, then committing on that type of action outside of the distance in which I'm going to be able to successfully take his sword and hit in one single action, then that shooting step actually leaves me in a lot of trouble. But the other thing that I want to look at is opportunities not to hit, but using the shooting step as a way to create an advantageous bind. So I can do that in a variety of different ways. One of the ways that I can do that is from the same situation that we were in just a second ago. We started, I was in the Sufechten. I know that from this distance, I'm not able to hit my training partner. His reflexes are too good, the strength of his taker is too strong, or sufficient to shut down my set from this distance, even with my shooting step. Whatever the case may be. He might just be faster or stronger than me, or sufficiently fast or strong to be able to mitigate the hitter from this distance. But that being said, that doesn't mean that I can't use that forward momentum that I create, that ability to rapidly close distance by exploding my center of mass forward past my forward foot, right? Losing control of my ability to stop moving forward, but keeping control of the bind, or working indes and Nachreisen, chasing the opening that he gives me as he mitigates. So in this case, I'm using my shooting step not to win the hitter, rather it's to win the bind. It's to create some kind of advantageous bind. I can do that just with a regular old set. I would start in a strong position. With the Sufechten, I extend my arms forward, A quick addendum to this. Notice that in order for me to do this, I have to rapidly explode my arms forward to gain control of his weak with the strong of my sword and maintain structure in my sword. If he pulls back, if his sword is found weak on weak or middle on middle, I still have control here. I can still maintain control. So it's not good enough to just explode my strong into his weak. I have to maintain structure in the blade all the way throughout my blade so that if he pulls back, I'm able to mitigate any lateral pressure. And finally, I need to perform the action in such a way that my extension pulls my body into my shooting step. So what I can't do is I can't do this and then do this. I don't want to get this far, then realize I'm an extension, I'm going to move my center of mass forward, because if he perceives that and I don't use my center of mass moving forward to strengthen my geometry as I close distance, I create a stronger and stronger angle. As I get closer to him, my strength is more and more valuable, right? So I need to do it in a way that my extension is pulling my body forward. So what I don't want to do is I don't want to come to full extension and then move my body forward, because I'm going to miss my opportunity. The other thing is I don't want my body to go forward first and then my sword. I need to extend my sword so that I'm gaining control of his weak with my strong, maintaining a strong comportment with my blade all the way through, and then getting my body to move in smoothly behind the extension. So I could do that with a basic set. I could also do that with a barring or a Verkeren action. So if I found myself in a bind and my opponent, their point is too low for me to set into, right? So how do I set into their point? I need to be able to hit from my shoulder through his weak to the target, right? And so if his point is in line with his strong, there's no way for me to go through his weak to the target without going through the strong of his blade, which means that all it takes for him is a bend of his wrist to be able to push my sword aside. In these moments, what I want to do is I want to bar, right? I want to Verkeren on his sword and use that as an opportunity to close distance. What I don't want to do is bar without doing anything to close distance, without shooting in behind it. Because if I do that, if I bar, he's durchwechseling and now I'm getting stabbed. So I'm using the same principle with barring as I did with setting, right? I'm still going to shoot in behind it. I extend my, give me a second, sorry. I extend my hilt to their point, mitigate the durchwechseln, so that there's no way for him to be able to change through underneath. He runs into my cross, and then I'm going to immediately shoot my body in behind it. So instead of looking something like this, it looks like something like this. In this case, I was able to win the bind, and I was able to wind a plow and finish with seeking the nearest opening with the point or with the short edge. But that's not the only bind that he can give me. And so that's the other thing that I want to talk about. I'm either looking to hit on these actions, or I'm looking to create an advantageous bind to work from. In this case, if I start here, I see his point is too low, I want to bar, I want to beat him. Let's say he's looking to Streisand. So his whole game plan is to just cut short edge underneath my hands and hit there, right? So if I see that, I'll beat him to it. But if he feels that, he's going to start trying to lift his sword, and he comes to Kron, and I'm going to chase the opening the same way that I would otherwise. I will not be able to do that, even if I get the barring. If he hangs from here, do it again. If he hangs from here, and I haven't actually shot my body in behind, now if I go up with this, he's coming around, and he starts to the hat or snapping or whatever you want. So I have to commit my center of mass forward. I have to send my center of mass past my forward leg, forcing a recovery step, paying attention to whether or not I'm going to win the bind or I'm committing on my hitter to win the exchange. And then if I'm going to win the bind, I have to know what types of bind I'm going to expect from my training partner, right? So I can do that either, I can do that with a set. In this case, he gives me a strong bind, it's okay. Or maybe I set and he comes up into cron and I come here, maybe I snap it, right? Or his point is low and I shoot and I hit short edge, seek the opening with the short edge. Or he gives me a slice and I work from there. So that's my video on shooting.